Well, everyone, let's get on with the rest of these comparisons that we have to do for the Samsung Galaxy S20. Now, this is actually the first one that I'm going to be doing of these phones, and I think the S20 lineup has a lot of cool offerings, and I think honestly a better contender to this phone would have been the iPhone 11 Pro, but I will get to that comparison later. But technically speaking, these are both the base models of this year's offerings from both phone manufacturers. So Samsung, the S20 is the cheapest one they're going to be making this year. The iPhone 11 also is technically the cheapest iPhone Apple made last year, so at least in the brand new market. I know they have like the iPhone 8s and all those things, but let's go ahead and see how the Samsung Galaxy S20 holds up against the iPhone 11. Now, first thing, obviously the price points of both of them. The Samsung Galaxy S20 costs over $1,000 pretty much. I think I paid like $1,070 for mine when including taxes and everything. I did get like $100 off though, and I bought like a wireless charger thing, so I guess that kind of meant something, but I couldn't even use that $100 Samsung credit to the phone itself. I had to use it for another accessory, which was kind of dumb. But the iPhone 11 on the other hand cost about $700. Obviously, that's the base model. You can get, the top tier model for a little bit more. And what I will tell you though is that even though the Samsung Galaxy S20 right now is the more expensive phone, I'm pretty sure a couple months down the line, the Samsung Galaxy S20 is going to be cheaper in the used market than the iPhone 11 in the used market. And I feel like it's probably going to go down to that price tag of like the iPhone XR right now in the used market. It's pretty hard to say, but if I had to say what the Galaxy S10 did last year with its massive depreciation in a short amount of time, maybe the S20 will go down the same way, who knows? But if you want to pick up either of these phones for the $1,000 for the S20 or the $700 for the iPhone 11, I'll leave them linked down in the description below. You can get them both from Amazon, and you can help support the channel at the same time. But looking on the front of both phones, I'll start off with the iPhone 11. That phone did have a 6.1-inch liquid retina IPS panel. It was 828 by 1792, and it had True Tone. It didn't have Force Touch or anything, but it honestly was a pretty good display. I don't think it was a bad display at all. It was really, really decent. You had the notch, which some people didn't like, but every iPhone has a notch, so it's not that big of a deal. And I think the panel is pretty good. Obviously it's not an OLED, it's not 1440p, it's not anything like that, but I still think it's a pretty decent panel for a majority of people. And I think if you get this phone and you probably don't even know that much about phones, or you don't really care about technology, you just want to get a phone and keep it for a while, I think an iPhone 11 would definitely be one of the phones that's probably suited for you, just because it's one of those phones that has like no frills, no extra features, no nothing like that, nothing crazy. It's pretty much a really good phone with more than what you need, but I think a majority of people won't really care about the screen on the iPhone 11, where the Samsung Galaxy S20 has that amazing 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED display. This is also a 1440p display, and obviously there's very little bezel on it. It has the little bit of bezel up top and bottom, but also has that hole punch design. And I think obviously between both of them, the Galaxy S20 looks much better. There's really no question about it. And I think it's a fair play from Samsung. They did a really good job last year, and kind of going on with that, they built the phone this year, and I think it does have the same exact bezel at the top and bottom as the S10, but with that hole punch display, just look how much better it looks than the iPhone 11, dude. It's crazy. Now, another amazing thing about the S20, that's probably one of its biggest features, is that 120Hz refresh rate display. So what you can do is it just allows you to refresh the rate faster on the screen. There's no way to actually say it to somebody, and I can't present it to, and I can't really show it over the screen because all these videos are filmed at 30 frames, but it just makes the screen so much smoother. And if you're a fan of OnePlus and you saw their OnePlus 7 Pro last year with the 90Hz refresh rate, that was crazy. That was like groundbreaking. Now we have 120Hz on an OLED display, which is amazing. So you have that capability on this phone where you don't have it on the iPhone 11. It's not an end all be all, but that is something to kind of keep in mind. So you also have that inbuilt fingerprint sensor in the display of the S20 where you don't have it on the iPhone 11. It's not an end all be all, but that is also something very, very important to note. On the bottom of both phones, the iPhone 11 has that lightning port. Galaxy S20 has a USB Type-C port. No headphone jacks on either of these phones though, so kind of keep that in mind. And on the back, you can see glass backs on both, wireless charging on both. Galaxy S20 does have reverse wireless charging, which is really cool, but you can see we have a dual camera setup on the iPhone 11, where we have a triple camera setup on the Samsung Galaxy S20. Now what I can tell you is, and like I've said before, the S20, if you have like more than 3 cameras, you're pretty much set for the next 4 or 5 years, honestly. Obviously we're probably going to get 7 cameras pretty soon, but as long as you have at least like a dual camera setup, you're good. But if you have a triple camera setup or more, then you're very, very good. So the camera setups on both these phones have always been really decent, but the Samsung Galaxy S20 does have the extra lens, so kind of keep that in mind, and I'll talk about more later on in this video. The Galaxy S20 also has that microSD card slot, which is very, very cool, where you don't have anything like that on the iPhone 11. And in terms of hardware and the outside, that really pretty much covers it up. Now moving on to the software side of things. So the Samsung Galaxy S20, as you know, is the newest phone. It started off with Android 10. It's on One UI 2, which is really nice, and I think it's definitely a step up in the right direction in terms of software. A lot of things have changed. It's a lot of smaller things. It's not like a crazy huge rehaul or anything, but you do have dark mode system-wide. That is really nice. And you also have gestures, which is amazing. It makes this phone feel so awesome. And last year I picked up the Galaxy S10 brand new, and at that time I'm like, man, they're still using the nav bar? Like, that's so outdated, where iOS and all those phones, like, they have gestures and all those things. And they did have some type of gesture thing, but it wasn't really as good as, iPhones. And now it's pretty much on par with iOS, to be honest. Whereas on the iOS side, the iPhone 11 started off with iOS 13. Right now it's on iOS 13.3.1, and both phones are going to last for a couple more years for sure. Like, if you get it now, I think the last thing you're going to be worrying about is the software lifecycle of both phones. But thinking of the longevity of both of them, the Samsung Galaxy S20 pretty much is not going to last as long as the iPhone 11, which is really sad, but there's really no good way of saying it. That's honestly the honest truth. The iPhone 11 will last many, many more versions of software on top of the Samsung Galaxy S20. And I'll give you an example. The iPhone 6 came out in 2014. That one is still pretty much getting software updates. It stopped on iOS 12.4.6 or something, but it could potentially get another version of software here and there. That phone came out in 2014. Another phone that came out in 2014 was the Samsung Galaxy S5, and that thing stopped getting software support many, many, many years ago. And even going further, the iPhone 5S that came out in 2013, same year as the Galaxy S5, same year as the Galaxy S4, that thing still got software updates too. So it's pretty crazy, but iOS has always been notorious of extending their software lifecycle of their devices, and hopefully Samsung can do the same thing. Maybe they'll change up here soon, but honestly, as of right now, the Samsung Galaxy S20 will just not last as long in terms of software as the iOS devices, so definitely not as long as the iPhone 11 as of right now. So that pretty much covers it up in terms of the software. Now hitting on the performance side of things, now I'll do a little bit of a speed test and everything, as you guys might already see, but I might do a whole separate dedicated speed test where I'll test the RAM and all those things. But the iPhone 11 has the Apple A13 Bionic chip, a hexa-core CPU, and there's 3 different models, a 64, 128, and 256 gig models, and all those models have 4 gigabytes of RAM. Where the Samsung Galaxy S20 has the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset, an octa-core CPU, an Adreno 650 GPU. And there's only one model of the Galaxy S20, the 128 gig model with 12 gigabytes of RAM. Now what I can tell you about the performance that I saw is app opening speeds and everything like that, loading into the apps was much better on the Galaxy S20 than the iPhone 11. It was just consistently beating all other competitors. I even compared it to the S10e, the Galaxy S10. Every single time the Galaxy S20 was faster than those phones, and it's not an end all be all. Honestly, it's honestly what I was expecting. I was expecting the Galaxy S20 to be faster, but that's also a humongous thing to consider, because when you're buying a phone like this, you want to buy it for a very, very long time. I think in terms of right now, the performance is faster on the Galaxy S20, but I'm curious to see a year after how well that performance is, if it's still a great performing device, because on my S10, when I compare those two, the S10 seemed much glitchier and much more weirder overall and much more stutterier, if that makes any sense, than my Galaxy S20. But I remember when I bought the S10, that thing was super smooth and felt just like my S20. So I'm kind of scared to see the future of the S20. Hopefully it doesn't, become much more sluggish over time, but a lot of Android phones are notorious for doing that. But the Galaxy S20 right now is much faster, and it's just a better performing device overall than the iPhone 11. You're getting more additional RAM, you're getting a faster chipset, and all of that. So it's not an end all be all. The iPhone 11 is still a very good performing phone, but between both, I'm pretty sure the Galaxy S20, as you guys can see, is the faster performing phone. Now that covers it up there. Again, I'll do a dedicated speed test later on, and I'll also do a dedicated camera test, testing in camera on both of them, but I'll go ahead and briefly talk about them. The iPhone 11 has 2 12 megapixel sensors, a wide angle lens and an ultra wide sensor, where the Samsung Galaxy S20 has a 12 megapixel wide angle lens, a 64 megapixel telephoto lens, and then another 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor, and on the front 12 megapixel sensor on the iPhone 11 and a 10 megapixel sensor on the Galaxy S20. And on the front camera of both phones, we can do 4K at 60 frames, which is really, really nice. And on that back camera, we can do 4K at 60 frames on both phones, 1080p at up to 240, and the quality of both phones are really nice. I think, one doesn't really blow the other one out of the water. Pretty much the S20 looks almost exactly as the S10, which is weird. I wasn't expecting it to be like that, but they both look almost identical. I don't really think obviously the S20 might be the better one overall, but like I've always said, I think Galaxies take much better photos and probably much better video qualities, but the iPhones just always have better audio quality and just kind of more smoothing in the videos and much more consistent. So I think I always side in the middle ground. There's not one clear winner. However, one amazing thing about the S20 is not only the additional telephoto lens, but also the fact that it can shoot 8K videos, which is overkill for a lot of people. They really don't need it, but that is just an amazing feature to have. And whether you have it or don't, you don't, whatever, you have the capability on the S20. So you're really future-proofing yourself for a vast majority of people. So I love that a lot. That's one of the coolest features ever. So I think between the camera, the Galaxy S20 probably is the winner. But again, I'll do a dedicated camera test later on. Now ending it off with the battery. The Samsung Galaxy S20 has a 4,000 mAh battery, the iPhone 11 has a 3,110 mAh battery, and again, between the both, they both have really good battery life. It's been my first day owning the S20, so I'll probably get back to you later on about this, but I think between both of them, they're going to be about the same. Maybe the iPhone 11 might be a little bit better, especially if you keep that 120Hz refresh rate on that display on the S20. It can take a pretty big hit in battery life, and especially if you have that reverse wireless charging on and you're charging other devices and everything, that can probably cause a lot of battery drain. But what I will tell you is that the battery features, it definitely goes to the S20. You have that reverse wireless charging, which is something you don't have on any iPhones, and even though that sucks up more battery, that is just a battery feature, and that's one of the coolest things ever. So I think in terms of the battery, I would probably end up siding with the S20 just because of that reverse wireless charging. Now to kind of sum up the comparison and answer the question, which one should you pick up? Now obviously in my opinion, the better value per dollar is probably the iPhone 11. That phone right now is $700 and you're saving quite a bit of money, but at the same time, I think the Galaxy S20 is just a better phone. You're getting much more of a phone from the S20 than the iPhone 11, and it's not an end all be all. Like, it's not like if you get an S20 you're going to want an iPhone 11 or vice versa, but there's some really cool features on the S20 that you have that you don't necessarily have on the iPhone 11, and I feel like the S20 can do pretty much everything an iPhone 11 can do, but the iPhone 11 cannot do everything that the S20 can do. And between both, I would probably pick up the S20 if I had unlimited money, but if I had a budget, probably the iPhone 11. So if you want to pick up either of these ones, like I stated, the links are down in the description. You can get them from Amazon, but that's pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section as well. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys would check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.